I'm Mike.
I'm Jason.
Welcome to Snake Envy. We're doing another question of the day. I think this is an interesting one, and we talk about feeding a lot because obviously it's important. But do you favor rats over mice, even if it means you might be feeding a smaller snake rat pups instead of adult mice? So let's start with you as a breeder. What is your strategy in deciding whether a snake gets rats or whether a snake gets mice?
Occasionally I'll feed a rat to a gopher snake or something. I feel like they're a little more dense, heavier, a little more substance to them.
More calories for sure.
Yeah, I occasionally feed those to breeder female gopher snakes. Couple times I've done king snakes, but not very often. My whole idea behind feeding rats and mice, because I feed both every week, is size appropriate.
Yeah.
And so, like, my bull snakes, and some of my Sonorans, they'll eat small rats. But bulls and Sonorans, I feed rats. Not when they're growing up. I feed them mice until they get to adulthood, or sub-adults. At least my my bulls.
Until the rats match them size-wise. Now, I think you're bringing up a good point. Let's stick with that. Some people don't believe in the progression of mice to rats. They would rather feed rat pups to smaller snakes and kind of jump right into rats with the understanding that they're going to eat adult rats later. But I've even encountered people who will feed rat pups over adult mice for adult snakes. So what are your thoughts on that?
I've done it a little bit, but generally not. Just because I've had this, small, like rat fuzzies, hoppers.
Yeah. Your situation's different than mine because you're feeding such a wide variety of prey every week that you're going to have a snake refuse, and then I'll see if if this one will take it. So you run into that a little more than I do, but I do run into that.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I feel like a rat pup versus an adult mouse is probably more fatty. A rat pup.
I kind of feel like adult snakes should be eating adult prey.
Right, I think
as much as possible.
Yeah, I think calcium is super important for snakes,
particularly for breeding.
Yeah. So I have a few snakes that they're just kind of shy and they want smaller. They can take an adult mouse, but they won't. They want hoppers, and I'll have to throw in a handful of hoppers.
Yeah. Just
so they'll eat, but but that's a little bit different than rats to mice. I generally don't do that, but
I agree. Yes, there are always individual snakes where you kind of have to deviate from your plan for whatever reason because they just have the preferences they have, and it's better they're eating than not. But as a general rule, so I'll give you two examples. I have a Great Basin gopher, and I have a California king snake that are adults. I also have another king snake that's still a neo. I will never feed them rats by design. Because in my view, the mice are more, large or jumbo mice as they get bigger are going to be more appropriately sized for them. I see no need for them to be eating rats. So those two species in particular, I don't plan to ever feed them rats. Now that doesn't mean if I get small rats for my larger snakes and I happen to have a couple of smaller ones in there, I don't think that's a big deal now and then.
I don't think so.
And part of, I also feed varied diets. So I'm not opposed ever to them eating a small rat, but I see a lot of people who kind of brag about the fact that their snakes can pound, these larger meals, or they're feeding Neo's rat pups rather than pinkies and fuzzies from mice because they're kind of wanting to accelerate growth. I don't believe in that kind of power feeding approach. But I think there are some species, like I'll go out on a limb and I'll say there's no king snake that needs to be eating rats. No Great Basin gopher snake needs to be eating rats. I will go out on a limb and say that. There's no need for it. So I consider it overkill. The other thing is cold-blooded species value energy conservation. They always have to replenish whatever energy they use. Now in captivity, that's much easier than in the wild because we're giving them ideal conditions. But think about it from the snake's perspective. If they're pounding that big meal that you're excited they're able to eat, it's putting a burden on them in terms of then having to go digest it. So my personal opinion, there are certain species that never need rats. They're never going to be big enough to need rats. And if you're feeding them rats to the point that they become larger, like if you've got that 6.5 foot California king snake at home that's pounding rats, I'm not sure. I'll just say I don't think you're doing that snake any favors, even though he's now big enough to do it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I have a big rat snake that's 5 foot. He can probably take,
A medium rat,
a small rat or something.
Yeah.
I tend to throw like 3 adult mice in there instead.
Yeah.
I like that idea better.
And the rat snakes are thin-bodied.
Yeah.
A bull snake that could easily take that rat, the rat snake might have to struggle a little bit to get it down, and then he's probably got to expend a little more energy to digest it than the bull snake that's larger bodied. So anyway, those are our opinions. Give us yours in the comments. We look forward to hearing what you think about rats versus mice, particularly by species. Thank you.
Thanks.